On Christmas Eve, my children, Bethany, Ethan, and Colin, canceled our special dinner with flimsy excuses, leaving me, a widow, utterly alone. I went to the restaurant, a table set for 6. Then my grandson, Leo, burst in, revealing their cruel secret and handing me Arthur's will. My world shattered, then rebuilt itself. I'm so glad you're here. Like, share, and let us know where you are listening from. Christmas without Arthur. It felt like a hollow echo in our once vibrant home. Every festive decoration, a painful reminder of laughter that no longer filled these rooms. 6 months had passed since he left me, and the holidays felt less like a celebration and more like a cruel test of endurance. I was 68, a widow, and desperately longing for the comforting embrace of my family. That's why I had poured my heart and most of my recent savings into planning the perfect Christmas dinner at the Gilded Spoon, an upscale restaurant known for its exquisite cuisine and intimate ambiance. I had reserved a private room, a cozy space with a roaring fireplace, just for us, me, my children Bethany, Ethan, and Colin, and my grandson Leo. I had meticulously chosen the menu, considering everyone's preferences. Arthur had loved their duck confit, and I imagined a bittersweet toast to his memory, surrounded by the faces of those we both cherished. I'd spent weeks agonizing over every detail, from the wine selection to the festive centerpiece, all in the hope of creating a warm, joyful bubble against the backdrop of my profound grief. I yearned for connection, for the easy chatter and shared stories that only family could provide. This dinner wasn't just a meal. It was my lifeline, my attempt to knit together the frayed edges of my life after Arthur's passing. The first call came from Bethany, my eldest. Her voice, usually so composed, sounded a touch too sweet, a little too apologetic. "Mom, darling, I'm so sorry. Leo has a sudden, terrible cough. We simply can't risk exposing everyone, especially with the flu going around. You know how delicate he can be." A shiver of unease traced its way down my spine. Leo had been perfectly fine that morning. Next was Ethan, always the pragmatist. "Mom, a sudden work crisis has come up. An urgent project, unexpected clients flying in. You know how it is. It's truly unavoidable." His tone left no room for debate. But a nagging suspicion began to form. Ethan rarely had sudden work crises on Christmas Eve. Finally, Colin, my youngest, called. He claimed a flu bug had struck him down. "I'm absolutely wiped, Mom. Can barely lift my head. Wouldn't want to spread it." His voice was raspy, but somehow, it sounded a little too theatrical. A cold dread settled in my stomach. 3 children, 3 separate calls, 3 flimsy, coordinated excuses. They had abandoned me. On Christmas Eve, tears welled in my eyes, hot and stinging, but a stubborn spark flickered within me. I wouldn't let them steal Christmas entirely. I had made the reservation, I had paid the deposit, and I would go. I dressed in my most elegant velvet dress, pinned Arthur's favorite brooch to my lapel, and made my way to the Gilded Spoon. The maitre d', Mr. Dubois, greeted me with his usual dignified smile, though a faint look of confusion crossed his face when he saw me alone. "Madame Alara, your party will be joining you shortly?" he inquired, gesturing to the exquisitely set table for 6 in the private room. "No, Mr. Dubois," I managed, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "It appears I'll be dining alone tonight." He ushered me to the table, the pristine white tablecloth, sparkling crystal, and 6 empty chairs, a stark tableau of my solitude. I sat, feeling like a ghost at my own feast. The room, which I had envisioned filled with warmth and laughter, felt cavernous and cold. I ordered a glass of champagne, hoping its bubbles might somehow lift the leaden weight in my chest. From my solitary perch, I could see into the main dining area through the slightly ajar double doors. My gaze fell upon a large, boisterous family seated at a round table, 3 generations laughing, clinking glasses, and exchanging gifts. A grandmother, her face crinkled with joy, held a baby on her lap while her adult children leaned in to tell her stories. The sight was a dagger to my already wounded heart, prompting fresh tears of loneliness and heartbreak that traced warm paths down my cheeks. This was all I had wanted. all I had planned. Just as I felt I might truly crumble, the double doors of the restaurant burst open, rattling on their hinges. My 7-year-old grandson, Leo, stood framed in the doorway, his chest heaving, hair disheveled, and eyes wide with a frantic determination I had never seen in him. He wore only a thin hoodie, despite the December chill, and looked utterly out of place amidst the elegant diners. Ignoring the maitre d's indignant shouts, he scanned the room wildly before his gaze landed on me. "Grandma Elara," he cried, rushing towards my table, his voice loud enough to turn heads. I know. You're probably wondering what I'm doing here," he gasped, out of breath, pulling up an empty chair. "But you need to know. They're not sick. Bethany, Ethan, and Colin, they're all together. At Romano's. It's just 2 blocks away. They've been planning this for weeks." My mind reeled, the flimsy excuses collapsing like a house of cards. Romano's was a far trendier, more expensive Italian restaurant. Known for its vibrant atmosphere and clientele, it was the kind of place my children frequented without me. The humiliation was a bitter taste in my mouth, but Leo wasn't finished. He pulled a thick, legal-sized manila envelope from beneath his hoodie, its corners slightly bent. "This is for you. From Arthur's lawyer, Mr. Henderson." He pushed it across the table. "He told me to give it to you personally, tonight, if I saw you alone." My hands trembled as I took the envelope. "Arthur's lawyer? Why? What is this, Leo?" He looked away, his youthful face etched with a complex mix of guilt and resolve. "It's Arthur's will. Grandma Elara. And there's something else." He swallowed hard. Something everyone else expected would be very different. With a jolt, I ripped open the seal. Inside, among official-looking documents, was a notarized letter. I scanned the first few lines, then reread them, my eyes widening. Arthur, in his clear, concise handwriting, had left everything. The upstate house, his substantial investment portfolio, his entire savings, even the antique pocket watch I thought he'd promised Ethan, solely to me. "To my beloved wife, Elara," it read, "who has always been my steadfast companion, my truest love, and the anchor of my life. May she find peace and comfort in what I leave behind." My head snapped up to Leo, who was watching me intently. They expected it to be split 3 ways, he murmured, confirming my dawning realization. "Bethany, Ethan, and Colin, they've been planning what they'd do with their expected share for months. That's why they're at Romano's." It was their celebration dinner. Before the official reading, just as this new betrayal settled heavy in my chest, Leo reached into his hoodie again, pulling out a smaller, sealed envelope. This one had a laboratory's logo printed on it. "Grandma Elara," he began, his voice barely a whisper, filled with a newfound maturity that startled me. "There's something else I need to tell you. I'm not really your grandson." He pushed the envelope across the table, revealing the words, "DNA paternity test results. I'm not Mom's biological son. I know this sounds crazy. I found this when I was looking for something else in her desk. I don't know who my real parents are. Bethany adopted me informally when I was very young. She knew Arthur and you were desperate for grandchildren, and she used me." He avoided my gaze, then looked directly into my eyes, raw honesty shining through. "She used me to get money from you. For years. For 15 years, Grandma. Every time she needed something, she'd bring me over, make me act a certain way, and then you and Arthur would always help out for my future or my medical needs. She told me to keep quiet." My world, already reeling from the Christmas abandonment and Arthur's unexpected will, completely collapsed. The beloved image of my daughter, the memories of raising my grandson Leo, the family narrative I had cherished for decades, all shattered into a million pieces. The pain of Bethany's deception, the sheer callousness of it all, threatened to consume me. But then, as I looked at Leo, this young man who had risked everything to tell me the truth, a tiny, fragile glimmer of hope sparked within the wreckage. Maybe, just maybe, something real was finally beginning. The restaurant faded into a blurry backdrop of shocked diners and hushed murmurs. My mind was a whirlwind of betrayal, grief, and a bewildering new reality. Leo, seeing the color drain from my face, quickly helped me up. "Come on, Grandma," he urged, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Let's get some air." He guided me through the maze of tables to the ladies' restroom, standing guard outside while I splashed cold water on my face, trying to scrub away the shock. When I emerged, my composure partially restored, Leo insisted I eat. "You haven't touched your food," he pointed out, gesturing to the still pristine plate of duck confit. He, in turn, attacked a bread roll as if he hadn't eaten in days. Between ravenous bites, he began to recount the events of the will reading, his words tumbling out, painting a vivid and increasingly horrifying picture. "It was just this morning, Grandma. At Mr. Davies's office," Leo began, his mouth full but his eyes sharp. "Bethany, Ethan, and Colin were all there, dressed in their best, looking so confident. Smug, almost, like they already knew how everything was going to go. They kept whispering and smiling to each other, making plans for their shares of the inheritance. Bethany was already talking about redecorating her house, Ethan about expanding his business, and Colin about that new sports car he's always wanted. They practically had it spent before they even heard a word." He paused to swallow, then continued. Mr. Davies started reading Arthur's will. It was all very formal. He listed some small bequests first, a watch to a distant cousin, some books to the library, that kind of thing. My mom, Ethan, and Colin were practically buzzing with impatience, waiting for the big numbers. Then, Mr. Davies got to the main body of the will, and his voice took on a different tone. Leo leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dramatic whisper. He said, "To my beloved wife, Alara, I leave all my worldly possessions, including the upstate house, all investment portfolios, savings accounts, and any remaining assets, to be hers unconditionally." A collective gasp filled the room. You could feel the air go out of the room. My mom's face went completely white, like she'd seen a ghost. Ethan slammed his fist on the table, muttering something about it being preposterous, and Colin just sat there, mouth agape, looking like a fish. They started arguing immediately. Leo continued, shaking his head. Bethany insisted Arthur must have been confused or unduly influenced. Ethan started quoting legal precedents he'd probably just Googled, saying it couldn't be right, that wills always split assets among the children. Mr. Davies, though, was calm as anything. He just held up a hand. He said, very clearly, that the will was recently updated, perfectly legal, and Arthur had explicitly bypassed the middle generation, ensuring everything went directly to you. A heavy silence fell as Leo took another bite of bread, letting the weight of the revelation sink in. My children, my own flesh and blood, had not only abandoned me on Christmas Eve but had been eagerly anticipating their inheritance, completely oblivious to Arthur's true wishes. My heart ached, but a sense of vindication, cold and stark, also began to bloom. "That wasn't even the worst part, Grandma," Leo said, his eyes meeting mine, brimming with a maturity that belied his years. After Mr. Davies dealt with their protests, he pulled out a second, smaller envelope. It had the same lab logo as the one I gave you. He explained that Arthur had engaged a private investigator a few months ago. He said Arthur had some concerns and wanted to confirm some facts about the family. My breath hitched. Arthur had known. My loving, astute Arthur had suspected something. Mr. Davies then read from the investigator's report. Leo went on, his voice flat. It stated that the DNA test confirmed I was not biologically related to Bethany, Ethan, Colin, or anyone else in your family. It debunked Bethany's entire story about me being the son of a distant cousin who had died tragically. The report revealed that Bethany had informally adopted me from a young, desperate teenage mother who couldn't care for me. She never legally adopted me, never registered me. It was all a carefully constructed lie. Leo's eyes were filled with a bitterness that cut me to the core. "It was always about money, Grandma. It's always been about money for them. Bethany knew how much you and Arthur wanted grandchildren. She saw an opportunity. She fabricated my entire backstory. Every detail. She made sure I looked just right, acted just right, especially when she needed money. He then detailed the elaborate scheme. Every year, there was a new expense. School trips, braces, tutoring, a rare medical condition that required specialist treatment. You and Arthur always opened your wallets without question. The investigator's report itemized it all. Over 15 years, it added up to nearly $200,000 just for my expenses. Not counting all the other loans and emergencies they conjured up, a wave of nausea washed over me. $200,000, all extracted under false pretenses, using a child as a pawn. Bethany would coach me, Leo admitted, his voice barely audible. Before we came to visit, she'd tell me what to say, how to act. Make sure you tell Grandma about your dream of going to that expensive art camp, Leo, she'd say. Or, complain about your allergies, so Grandma and Grandpa will worry about your health. I hated it. I always felt like a puppet. He shivered. They were frantic after Mr. Davies finished reading everything. Bethany was crying. Ethan was shouting about legal challenges. Colin was just repeating, impossible. Impossible. They were already planning to contest the will, to try and prove Arthur was incompetent in his final months. He looked at me, a tear finally escaping his eye. But Grandma Elara, even though it was all a lie, your and Arthur's love for me felt real. It was the only real thing in my life. His confession was a raw, aching plea. And in that moment, despite the overwhelming deception, I saw not a pawn, but a deeply wounded boy searching for truth and belonging. The cab ride to my apartment was a silent journey through a landscape of shattered illusions. Leo sat beside me, clutching the manila envelope as if it contained the fragile remnants of his entire existence. The vibrant Christmas lights of the city blurred past, their festive glow a stark contrast to the darkness that had descended upon my heart. My own children, the very ones I had nurtured and loved unconditionally, had orchestrated such a cruel charade. Yet, in the midst of this profound betrayal, a new, unexpected connection had formed with Leo, a bond forged in shared pain and a startling revelation of truth. When we arrived at my modest, cozy apartment, I turned to him. Leo, I said, my voice softer than I intended, you're not going back to Bethany's tonight. You'll stay here. Let her wonder where you are for a change. A flicker of surprise, then relief, crossed his face. He nodded, a silent acceptance of the sanctuary I offered. I put on a kettle for tea, the familiar ritual a small comfort in the overwhelming chaos of my emotions. As the warmth of the mug seeped into our hands, Leo began to speak again, his voice hesitant at first, then gaining strength. Grandma Elara, he began. I always suspected something wasn't quite right. Bethany's stories about my medical history, for example, they never quite added up. One year, she'd say I had a rare blood type from a distant cousin's family. The next, she'd claim I had an allergy to something common that supposedly ran in her side of the family, even though I'd never reacted to it before. She'd get annoyed if I questioned anything. Just tell me to remember what she'd told me. He looked down into his tea, stirring it slowly. And then, there was just... You both had those beautiful blue eyes, and that distinct way of holding your hands. You were so clearly related. And me? I have brown eyes, dark hair. My talents were always different too. Drawing, music, things no one else in the family seemed interested in. I used to just dismiss it, think I was the odd one out. But a part of me always wondered why I felt so... disconnected. Genetically speaking, a knot tightened in my stomach. The subtle cues, the unanswered questions, they had been there, lurking beneath the surface. But I, blinded by love and the desire for a complete family, had chosen to ignore them. Arthur, in his wisdom, had not. I also used to overhear things, Leo continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Bethany on the phone, usually when she thought I was asleep or out playing, she'd use phrases like, as long as he doesn't find out, or, it's working better than we planned. She'd often sound so satisfied, especially after one of your visits or when Arthur had helped out. Then, she'd coach me to be extra grateful, to write thank you notes, to be particularly sweet to you both. It was always after she'd received money. My heart ached. A profound and painful throb for this child who had been unwittingly groomed and manipulated. He had offered me genuine affection, a bond that had now proven to be the only authentic connection I'd had with my supposed lineage, and he, in turn, had received a twisted form of love, wrapped in a blanket of lies and monetary gain. Then, Leo's expression hardened. But there's something even worse, Grandma. After I left Mr. Davies's office this morning, after they were all furious, I didn't go straight to you. I went back to Bethany's house. I knew she'd be livid, and I just needed to process everything. I heard them. Bethany, Ethan, and Colin. They were on a conference call, their voices low but furious. They were planning. He took a deep breath, the words tumbling out in a rush. They're not just going to challenge Arthur's will on the grounds of his competency. They're also planning to discredit me as a fraudulent heir. They called me. They want to argue that any money you and Arthur gave me over the years was obtained under false pretenses. They want to get it back, claiming I was part of the deception. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. The ruthlessness of my children was truly boundless. But Leo wasn't finished. His next revelation struck me like a physical blow. And then, he continued, his eyes fixed on mine. They started talking about you, Grandma. They discussed having you declared incompetent too, because of your poor judgment in continuing to support me, a fraudulent grandchild. Even after learning the truth, they said if they could prove you were incapable of managing your own affairs, then they could be appointed as your guardians. That way, they'd control Arthur's entire inheritance. Your inheritance. The walls of my apartment, my sanctuary, suddenly felt like they were closing in on me. My children, my own flesh and blood, were not merely challenging a will. They were plotting to dismantle my autonomy, to strip me of my dignity, and to seize control of my life, all for the sake of money. The thought of them having legal authority over my decisions, my finances, my very existence, was more terrifying than any other betrayal. I would be trapped, a prisoner in my own home, a mere vessel for their financial gain. In that moment, a strange calm washed over me. I had hit rock bottom. There was nothing left to lose, no more illusions to shatter. The fear, the grief, the humiliation, they coalesced into a fierce, burning resolve. I looked at Leo, this brave, damaged boy who had offered me the truth, and a plan, nascent but powerful, began to form in my mind. Leo, I said, my voice steady, my gaze unwavering. How would you feel about helping me beat them at their own game? The morning after Christmas Eve dawned, not with the usual festive cheer, but with a stark, almost blinding clarity. I woke up with a singular purpose, the fear that had threatened to suffocate me replaced by a cold, unwavering resolve. My children's monstrous plans, as revealed by Leo, had solidified my determination. I would not let them win. I would not allow them to desecrate Arthur's memory or strip me of my dignity. Leo was still asleep on the pull-out couch in the living room, a peaceful expression on his young face that belied the turmoil he had endured. I moved quietly, making coffee, then picked up the phone. It was barely 9 o'clock, but I knew Mr. Davies, Arthur's diligent lawyer, would be in his office. Mr. Davies's office, a crisp voice answered. "Good morning, Miss Collins," I said, recognizing his longtime secretary. "It's Alara Vance. Is Mr. Davies available?" "Ah, Mrs. Vance," Miss Collins replied, a note of anticipation in her voice. "Mr. Davies was expecting your call. He asked me to inform you that he has some additional documents from Arthur that he believes you'll want to review, especially given recent developments." My heart quickened. Arthur, always one step ahead. "Even in death, we'll be right over," I said, my voice firm. I gently woke Leo. "Get dressed, dear. We're going to see Mr. Davies." He blinked, then nodded, his face still creased with sleep, but his eyes instantly alert. We took a cab downtown to Mr. Davies's modest office, a familiar building that now held the promise of further revelations. The waiting room was quiet, the air thick with unspoken expectations. Miss Collins led us into Mr. Davies's office, a room filled with leather-bound books and the scent of old paper. Mr. Davies, a man with kind, intelligent eyes and a perpetually calm demeanor, rose from behind his large mahogany desk. He greeted me with a solemn nod, then turned to Leo. "Leo, it's good to see you. Your grandfather spoke about you often, you know. He was very fond of you." Leo's shoulders relaxed almost imperceptibly at the lawyer's warmth, a small, genuine smile gracing his lips. "Ilara," Mr. Davies began, settling back into his chair. "Arthur, in his remarkable foresight, left very specific instructions for additional materials to be shared. These were only to be revealed if anyone challenged his will or, as has unfortunately happened, if the true nature of certain family relationships came to light. He anticipated these possibilities. He reached beneath his desk and produced another manila envelope, significantly thicker than the one Leo had given me the previous night. It bore Arthur's distinct, neat handwriting. To be opened by Ilara, in the presence of Mr. Davies, only if the will is contested or the truth of Leo's lineage is revealed. Arthur sincerely hoped these wouldn't be necessary, Mr. Davies said, his gaze softening. He genuinely wanted to believe the best of his children. But he was also a realist. My hands trembled slightly as I took the envelope. Inside, I found not just documents, but a treasure trove of damning evidence. A stack of glossy photographs, meticulously organized bank statements, printouts of phone records, and several pages of what looked like transcribed conversations. "Arthur began to have suspicions about 18 months ago," Mr. Davies explained, gesturing to the contents. "He noticed a pattern in your children's financial requests. They always seemed to be in dire straits, always for something urgent concerning Leo, or for some sudden personal emergency. Yet, he also observed their lifestyles didn't seem to reflect their alleged financial hardship." I began to sift through the photographs. My breath hitched. Here was Bethany, smiling broadly, champagne flute in hand, at a lavish resort spa. The date stamp indicated it was just 3 days after she had tearfully called me, claiming she couldn't afford Leo's essential school supplies and needed a loan to cover them. Then, Ethan, looking resplendent in an expensive suit, dining at a Michelin-starred restaurant with a group of friends. That photograph was taken the week after he had pleaded with Arthur for money to cover a supposed urgent medical emergency for himself. Leo gasped beside me. "They were never struggling," he whispered, his voice laced with dawning realization and a deep sense of betrayal. "All those stories. They were all lies. They really spent the money on themselves." Mr. Davies nodded gravely. "The bank statements confirm it, Leo. We traced the funds. Monies given to Bethany, Ethan, and Colin were almost immediately transferred out of their accounts, often to luxury retailers, booking agents for exotic vacations, or deposited into accounts clearly linked to high-end purchases. Arthur compiled all of this. He left nothing to chance. The evidence was overwhelming, a carefully constructed mosaic of deceit and manipulation. My children had been systematically exploiting Arthur's and my generosity, using Leo as their primary emotional and financial leverage. "And then there's this," Mr. Davies said, sliding a small, discreet digital recorder across the desk. Arthur, ingenious man that he was, claimed his hearing was getting worse. He started recording all family meetings, ostensibly so he wouldn't miss anything important. In truth, he was secretly documenting their true intentions, their conversations, their blatant disregard for his and your feelings. He wanted proof, undeniable proof. Should it ever come to this, my mind raced. Arthur, my quiet, observant husband, had seen through their charade. He hadn't just suspected, he had known, and he had protected me, even from beyond the grave, arming me with the very ammunition I would need to fight back. If you're finding this story as unbelievable and infuriating as I am, please do me a favor, hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. The truth is often stranger, and far crueler, than fiction. And this story is just getting started. My hands trembled as I took the small digital recording device from Mr. Davies. He handed me a pair of earphones, and with a deep, fortifying breath, I pressed play. The crackle of static gave way to the familiar voices of my children. Bethany, Ethan, and Colin. They were discussing me, their mother, in a tone that sent shivers down my spine. She's been so forgetful lately, hasn't she? Bethany's voice, sugar-sweet but with an underlying edge, began. I'm really worried about her living alone in that big house, Ethan chimed in, his tone pragmatic and dismissive. She repeats herself a lot, too, and seems to forget conversations we've just had. Remember last week when she asked me about the gardener, and I just told her he was coming on Thursday? Colin, ever the follower, added, Yeah. I think she's struggling. It's natural for women her age, of course, but it's becoming a concern. My blood ran cold. This wasn't genuine concern. It was a systematic dismantling of my competency. A subtle, insidious campaign to undermine my independence. They were laying the groundwork. Then, Bethany made their true aim brutally clear. Perhaps it's time we discussed getting one of us added to her bank accounts, she suggested, just to help her manage things. And maybe power of attorney? You know how overwhelming financial decisions can be for women her age. The casual sexism, the thinly veiled condescension, burned hotter than any betrayal before it. They weren't just after money. They were after control. My autonomy. Arthur's voice, firm but weary, cut through the fabricated concern. Elara is perfectly capable of managing her own affairs, Bethany. Her memory is just fine, and she has me to help with any overwhelming decisions. There was a moment of uncomfortable silence. Then the children shifted tactics, their voices tinged with resentment. But Dad, Ethan argued, you're spending so much on Leo. He's not even really family, is he? I mean, biologically speaking. My heart lurched. Even then, they were questioning Leo's place in our family, implicitly challenging his right to our love and generosity. That money for Leo's college fund, Bethany continued, her voice turning persuasive. It could go towards Mom's long-term care, or a really nice assisted living facility, you know. Give her the best support she needs. The implication was clear. I was an inconvenience, a financial burden, and they were already planning my institutionalization. Arthur's voice, when he spoke again, was low, dangerous. Leo is absolutely family, and what we choose to spend on him is none of your concern. He is our grandson, and he will have every opportunity we can give him. His words were a shield, protecting me and Leo even as they were spoken. The recording continued for another 20 minutes, a chilling exposé of my children's true characters. They discussed everything from the supposed burden of the upstate house to their responsibility to protect my assets from my own impulsiveness. It was a systematic, calculated plan to strip me of my autonomy and independence, all disguised under a veneer of loving concern. I pulled the earphones off, my hands shaking. The anger that surged through me was cold and unwavering. That, Mr. Davies said, his voice grave, is just one of 13 such recordings Arthur made. All of them illustrate a consistent pattern of your children attempting to control your finances and undermine your competency, both individually and collectively. He slid a stack of legal pads towards me, each one filled with precise dates and transcribed snippets. Then, he produced another, even thicker binder. Now, Elara, let's talk about the full extent of the financial exploitation. The private investigator meticulously tracked every transfer, every loan, every gift, given over the past 15 years. He opened the binder to a page displaying a comprehensive financial analysis. The number at the bottom of the page, highlighted in red, made my stomach clench. $847,000. Mr. Davies stated, his voice devoid of emotion, was siphoned from your and Arthur's accounts by Bethany, Ethan, and Colin. Over a decade and a half, my breath caught in my throat. Almost $1 million. It was an astronomical sum, a staggering betrayal of trust and love. The investigator, Mr. Davies continued, tapping a finger on a series of colorful charts, tracked exactly where that money went. luxury vacations to the Caribbean, designer clothes and accessories, high-end cars, extensive home renovations for Bethany's house, spa treatments for all of them, extravagant meals at exclusive restaurants. The list goes on. They were living lavish lifestyles, funded entirely by your generosity, while fabricating stories of hardship. Leo, who had been listening intently, his face a mixture of shock and disgust, buried his face in his hands. The full weight of his mother's deception, not just of me, but of him, was palpable in his slumped posture. And finally, Mr. Davies concluded, pushing a printout of an email chain across the table. Arthur also discovered this, dating back almost 5 years, email correspondence between Bethany, Ethan, and Colin. They were actively planning, discussing how to manage and divide your assets, both yours and Arthur's, after you were both out of the picture, as they so callously put it. My vision blurred. They had been plotting for years, years of smiling faces, holiday dinners, and false affection, all masking a chilling, calculated scheme to strip Arthur and me of everything we had worked for, everything we believed in. The anger hardened into a diamond-sharp resolve. They wanted a fight. They were about to get one. After revealing the horrifying extent of my children's deception and financial exploitation, Mr. Davies paused, allowing the gravity of the information to sink in. He then leaned forward, his expression shifting from somber to one of quiet admiration. Arthur was a remarkable man. Alara, he stated, his voice filled with respect. He didn't just uncover their scheme. He laid traps. He then slid a crisp, new document across the table. It was a thick, 15-page legal plan, bound neatly, with a title emblazoned on the cover in elegant script, Protection Protocol for Alara Holloway. My eyes scanned the title, then flickered back to Mr. Davies. A protection protocol? I whispered, a nascent hope fluttering in my chest. Indeed, he confirmed with a slight smile. Arthur anticipated almost every single move your children might make. He knew they wouldn't take the will's contents lightly, and he certainly foresaw their likely attempts to challenge it, and possibly your own mental competency. He guided my gaze to a specific paragraph. Here, on page 3. This is a key clause within his will, meticulously drafted and legally ironclad. It states, very explicitly, that any heir who challenges the validity of this will, or attempts to have my beloved wife, Alara Holloway, declared mentally incompetent for the purpose of controlling her assets or seizing her inheritance, shall automatically forfeit any and all claim to my estate. Their forfeited portion shall then be immediately and unconditionally transferred to Alara Holloway, to be hers in perpetuity. My jaw dropped. Leo, who had been silently absorbing every word, let out a soft gasp beside me. It was brilliant. A perfect legal trap, designed to disarm them with their own avarice. The more they fought, the more they lost, and the more I gained. And Arthur didn't stop there. Mr. Davies continued, turning another page. He also established a specialized trust, to be activated immediately, should any legal action be initiated to challenge your mental competency. This trust, named the Holloway Preservation Trust, would automatically place all your assets, including everything bequeathed to you, in Arthur's will, under the management of an independent, court-appointed trustee. This trustee would be legally bound to act solely in your best financial interests, completely bypassing your children's attempts to gain control. Leo's eyes were wide with amazement, a mixture of shock and dawning respect. He thought of everything, he murmured, shaking his head in disbelief. Grandpa Arthur. He really did. I felt a surge of emotions, gratitude, admiration, and a profound, aching love for Arthur. Even in death, he was still protecting me, still fighting for my well-being, still ensuring that I would not be at the mercy of my own manipulative children. He had seen their true colors far before I had, and he had painstakingly crafted a legal fortress around me. Arthur truly loved you, Alara, Mr. Davies said, his voice gentle. He spent his final months ensuring you would be secure, not just financially, but emotionally, by giving you the means to defend yourself against those who would seek to harm you. He then reached into a drawer and pulled out a single, sealed envelope. It was made of thick, creamy paper, and on the front, In Arthur's distinctive, elegant handwriting were the words, "For my beloved Alara, when you're ready to fight back." He handed it to me. "Arthur asked me to give you this, only when you felt you had all the information, and when you were prepared to take action." My fingers traced the familiar letters of Arthur's name. This wasn't just an inheritance. It was a legacy of love, a testament to his understanding of the world, and a profound act of empowerment. He hadn't just left me money. He had left me the precise tools to reclaim my life, to protect my future, and to defend those who truly mattered to me, like Leo, who had unwittingly become a part of this painful saga. The sting of betrayal from my children was still sharp, but it was now tempered by the overwhelming force of Arthur's love and foresight. He had been playing a much deeper, more strategic game than any of us had realized. He had laid the foundation, uncovered the truth, and provided the ammunition. Now, it was my turn. It was my turn to make the next strategic move, to use the weapons he had so carefully crafted, and to ensure that his faith in me, and his love for me, would not be in vain. The fight was coming, and I was finally ready. The 2-hour drive to our upstate house was a journey through both physical landscapes and the terrain of my memories. Leo sat quietly beside me, gazing out the window, occasionally glancing at the new key Arthur had arranged for me, which now rested in my palm. Every winding road, every familiar turn, brought back decades of life with Arthur. Summer picnics, autumn foliage drives, quiet winter evenings spent by the fire. The pain of his absence was a constant ache. But the revelations from Mr. Davies's office had infused it with a new, complex layer of understanding. As I drove, I pulled out Arthur's initial letter, the one Mr. Davies had given me with the will. I reread his words, his declaration of love, his quiet warning. The pain was still raw. The realization that he had known our children's true nature for years, while I had remained blissfully, foolishly ignorant. He had carried that burden alone, protecting me from a truth he knew would shatter my world. His final months, which I had believed were filled with shared serenity, were in fact a period of intense, strategic planning, of meticulously building a fortress of legal protection around me. My children's betrayal was immense, but Arthur's foresight and love were even greater. As the familiar gravel driveway crunched beneath the tires, the upstate house came into view. It stood as it always had, serene and welcoming, nestled amongst tall pines, its clapboard exterior weathered to a comforting shade of gray-blue. The window boxes, usually bursting with flowers in summer, were now bare, awaiting spring. Everything was exactly as we had left it 6 months ago, yet it felt profoundly different. It wasn't just my house anymore. It was my refuge, my legacy, and a tangible symbol of Arthur's unwavering devotion. A new sense of ownership, a fierce readiness, settled within me. "This is it," I said to Leo, my voice imbued with a new resolve. He nodded, taking in the picturesque scene. "It's beautiful." "Grandma, Alara." We got out of the car, the crisp winter air invigorating. I approached the front door, the new, heavy brass key cool in my hand. Leo, ever observant, offered, "Let me get that for you, Grandma." He took the key and, with a satisfying click, unlocked the heavy oak door. A faint scent of lavender, a subtle potpourri Arthur always insisted on, greeted us. The main room stretched before us, bathed in the soft afternoon light, filtering through the large bay window. Bookshelves lined every wall, overflowing with Arthur's vast collection, interspersed with family photos and mementos. A grand piano stood in one corner, its polished surface reflecting the light. It was a room filled with warmth, history, and the quiet dignity of a life well lived. Leo stepped inside, his eyes wide with genuine admiration. "Wow," he breathed. "It's even more beautiful than I remember. All these books." He traced a finger along a spine. "It feels so real." He looked at me, a thoughtful expression on his face. Bethany always talked about gutting it, said it was dated, wanted to modernize it into some kind of minimalist showpiece. A pang of disgust shot through me. They hadn't seen a home. They had seen an asset to be stripped and redesigned to their taste. "Arthur's study," I said, my voice quiet, a sense of pilgrimage guiding me. It's through here. The study was exactly as Arthur had left it, orderly, yet imbued with his presence. His worn leather armchair, the antique globe, the meticulously organized desk, and there, in the center of the blotter, sat another envelope. My name, Elara, was written across it, in his careful, familiar hand. My heart ached with a bittersweet intensity. He truly had anticipated everything. I sat in his chair, its leather still holding the faint scent of his cologne, and picked up the letter. My fingers trembled as I broke the seal. My dearest Elara, if you are reading this, then the truths I hoped would remain buried have regrettably come to light. My heart aches for the pain this discovery must be causing you. Please know, my love, that every precaution I took, every decision I made, was done out of an immeasurable love for you, not out of anger or malice towards our children. I wanted to protect you, always. You must not blame yourself, Elara. You did not fail as a mother. Your children failed. They twisted your boundless love, your generous nature, into a weakness they could exploit. Their avarice overshadowed any genuine affection they might have had. You were simply too good, too trusting, too pure of heart to see their true intentions. I confess my greatest regret is not intervening sooner. I saw the signs, the subtle shifts, the increasingly bold requests, but I couldn't bear the thought of shattering your illusions, of forcing you to choose between your husband and your children. I was selfish in that, perhaps, wanting to preserve your happiness for as long as possible. What finally pushed me to act, to begin building this fortress, as Mr. Davies may have called it, was when I overheard their discussions about managing your finances and questioning your competency. That, my dearest Elara, I could not, and would not, allow. Your independence, your dignity, your spirit. These are the very essence of you, and I swore to my dying breath that no one, not even our own children, would take that from you. I finished reading, tears streaming down my face. But they were not tears of sorrow alone. They were tears of profound love, of understanding, and of a steely resolve. Arthur had not merely protected me, he had empowered me. He had given me the truth, the tools, and the unwavering conviction that I was not alone in this fight. Arthur's letter continued, his words a beacon in the darkness that had enveloped me. He wasn't just explaining, he was empowering. Elara, my love, you are not responsible for their choices. You are not obligated to sacrifice your peace, your dignity, or your financial security for their insatiable greed. Remember the fierce, independent woman I fell in love with, the woman who built her own successful garden design business from scratch. That woman is still there, Elara. I give you permission, if you ever needed it, to stand up for yourself, to fight for your life, to choose your peace. And speaking of choices, I want to wholeheartedly endorse Leo. That young man, though not connected by blood, has shown more loyalty, honesty, and genuine love than our own children combined. He deserves every opportunity. Behind my old university diploma, on the study wall, you'll find a small safe. The combination is your birthday, my dearest. Inside, you'll find documents for a separate, substantial education fund I set up specifically for Leo. It's for his future. Free from their influence. My eyes welled up again, this time with tears of profound gratitude. Arthur hadn't forgotten Leo. He had seen his worth, his inherent goodness, and had ensured his future. There's one more thing, my love. For our 50th anniversary, I bought the adjacent lot of land, the one with the old apple orchard. The deed is with Mr. Davies. I imagined us, perhaps, building something beautiful there, a studio for your art, or a small guest house for friends. Use it, Elara. Build something beautiful there, for yourself, for your new life. Finally, a warning. They will try to come back. They will come with apologies, with promises, with tears. They will use every emotional leverage they know you possess. Don't believe them, Elara. Not one word. Their regret will not be for their actions, but for their failure to control you. Protect your heart, my love. Live your life. I finished the letter, my face wet with tears of relief, of love, of being utterly, completely seen and understood by the man who knew me best. Arthur had truly given me everything. Not just material wealth, but the strength, the permission, and the clarity to face the future. I looked at Leo, whose eyes were still fixed on me, waiting. He really loved you, Leo, I said, my voice thick with emotion. He set up a separate education fund, just for you. He knew. He was right about everything. A small, hopeful smile touched Leo's lips. He was a good man, Grandma Alara. The best. Energized by Arthur's words and a renewed sense of purpose, I stood up from his desk. Come on, Leo, I declared, my voice firm. Let's see what else your grandfather left us. But first, I paused. Picking up the phone, I had some phone calls to make. My first call was to Bethany. Her voice, when she answered, was immediately defensive. Mom? Where is Leo? I've been worried sick. Save it, Bethany. I cut her off. My voice steady, unwavering. I know everything. About Leo. About the will. About the $847,000 you and your brothers took. About your plans to declare me incompetent. There was a stunned silence on the other end, then a whimper, followed by forced tears. Mom, please, it's not what you think. We were just concerned. Your concern cost Arthur and me almost $1 million and decades of emotional manipulation, I stated, the facts a shield against her theatrics. Consider our relationship over. Don't call me again. Don't come to this house. Live with your choices. And I hung up. The decades of manipulation, of being taken for granted, ended with a click. Next was Ethan. He was furious from the moment he heard my voice. What the hell, Mom? What did that little brat tell you? I believe Mr. Davies, the private investigator Arthur hired, and Arthur's own recorded conversations. Ethan, I countered, my voice sharper than I thought possible. I also believe the bank statements and the photographs of your luxury vacations funded by our loans. Your inheritance is gone, and any attempt to challenge the will or my competency will only ensure you lose everything you hope to gain. Don't bother calling. You are cut off. His enraged shouting faded as I disconnected the call. Finally, Colin. He tried a different tactic. Mom, I'm so sorry. I know this looks bad, but Bethany and Ethan put so much pressure on me. I really am sorry. Sorry you got caught, Colin, or sorry for what you did, I asked, no warmth in my voice. It doesn't matter. Your actions have consequences. Consequences you will now live with. Just like your siblings, you are no longer welcome in my life. I hung up before he could respond. The calls were brief, brutal, and cathartic. I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in years, a profound sense of freedom. In the ensuing months, life blossomed in unexpected ways. Leo, freed from the suffocating pressure of Bethany's manipulation, truly thrived. He transferred to a new high school, one with a strong arts program, and pursued his artistic talents with a newfound passion. He painted, he sketched, he explored photography. His grades soared, and his confidence, once fragile, grew with each passing day. He was accepted into a prestigious art school with a partial scholarship, the rest of his tuition and living expenses generously covered by Arthur's dedicated education fund. I, too, began to heal. The upstate house became my sanctuary, a place where Arthur's love truly resided. I started taking long walks in the apple orchard, envisioning what I might build on the adjacent lot. The garden, long neglected, slowly came back to life under my hands. The peace Arthur had wished for me, the autonomy he had so carefully preserved, was finally mine. 6 months after that tumultuous Christmas Eve, a gentle warmth settled over the lake house. I stood on the wide, wrap-around porch, the soft summer breeze rustling through the leaves of the ancient maple tree, watching Leo, resplendent in his cap and gown, cross the makeshift stage set up on the town green. He was graduating high school, and the pride swelling in my chest was as profound and real as any mother could feel. Leo had chosen to stay with me, and the guest cottage he had designed himself on the adjacent lot was almost complete. It was a beautiful, functional space, a testament to his burgeoning artistic talent, and a symbol of our new, shared life. He would live there during his college breaks, a permanent fixture in my peaceful existence. My biological children, Bethany, Ethan, and Colin, had, as Arthur predicted, tried every tactic. Flowers arrived, followed by tearful voicemails and cards filled with feigned regret. Bethany even brought her young daughter, Lily, to my door, using her as emotional bait. But Arthur's words, sharp and clear, resonated in my mind. Don't believe them. I held firm, unwavering in my resolve. The pain of their actions lingered, but the illusion of family had shattered, replaced by an authentic, albeit smaller, circle of chosen souls. My life was now filled with this new, beautiful chosen family. There was Eleanor Vance, my delightful neighbor, who dropped by with fresh-baked pies and even fresher gossip. Dr. Reed, my kind family doctor, who reminded me to prioritize my own well-being. Samuel, the chatty owner of the hardware store, who always had a spare bolt or a piece of advice for the cottage construction. And Chloe, the quirky owner of the local bookstore, who always recommended the perfect escapist novel. These were the people who showed up, who genuinely cared, who offered unconditional support. After the graduation ceremony, our small group gathered on the porch. Eleanor, with her usual twinkle in her eye, handed Leo a beautifully wrapped box. For my favorite artist, she declared, embracing him warmly. Inside were expensive art supplies, brushes and paints Leo had only dreamed of. Your family, Leo, she added, her voice soft but firm. It was an impromptu, joyful gathering, filled with genuine connection and laughter that felt light and true. Amidst the cheer, my phone buzzed. It was Sarah Davies, Mr. Davies's daughter, and now a junior partner at his firm. Elara, she began, her voice professional. I have some final instructions from Arthur to be conveyed to you today. My heart gave a little flutter. Arthur, still orchestrating from beyond the veil. He instructed me to inform you, Sarah continued, that he wished to make a charitable donation of $200,000 in your name to a charity of your choice. He specified it was to be used to bring joy and new beginnings to those who need it most, just as Elara deserved. A gasp escaped my lips. $200,000. Arthur's ultimate gift wasn't just the protection or the inheritance. It was the permission to build a life that made me happy, free from the burden of trying to earn love from those who were incapable of giving it. He was giving me the means to spread the love I had so freely given, to truly live out the generosity of my spirit, without the fear of it being exploited. As the sun began to set, casting long, golden shadows across the porch, Leo moved to sit beside me. Grandma Elara, he said, his voice quiet, filled with a newfound maturity. I know. I'm not really your grandson by blood, but you're the realest family I've ever had. I took his hand, my fingers intertwining with his strong, youthful ones. Blood doesn't make family, Leo, I affirmed, my voice unwavering. Love makes family. Choice makes family. Showing up makes family. And you, my dear boy, you chose to show up, and I choose you. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the first stars appear in the darkening sky, planning Leo's college move, envisioning our future together, a future built not on obligation or deceit, but on genuine affection and mutual respect. I reflected on my journey. I had found peace, profound respect, and a love that was deeper and more authentic than any I had known. Save for Arthur's, I was no longer the naive, trusting widow, nor the heartbroken mother. I was Elara Holloway, exactly who I was meant to be, surrounded by those who truly cherished me, living a life that was finally, truly my own. Just as Arthur had planned,